For decades, Formula One cars felt like machines from another universe. Normal people weren't supposed to experience them. I mean, they were too loud, they were too aggressive, too complicated. Pure racing machines built for one thing only, the track. But then Mercedes asked a very dangerous question. What if we ignored every warning and built one anyway? Not a car inspired by Formula One. Not a car that borrowed some Formula One technology. No, but an actual Formula One powertrain. And even Mercedes underestimated how impossible that idea really was. Because building the AMG ONE didn't just require money. It required surviving years of engineering chaos, failed emission tests, overheating nightmares, software issues, an engine so extreme that it barely wanted to function outside the racetrack. At several points, the entire project looked doomed. Most companies probably would have cancelled it, but Mercedes kept going. Because this car was never meant to be normal. It was supposed to become the closest thing humanity had ever created to a Formula One car with license plate. And somehow, against all logic, against all problems, it actually pulled it off. But to understand why the AMG ONE became one of the most insane hypercars ever built, we need to go back. Back to the moment Mercedes completely took over Formula One. So back in 2010, Mercedes-AMG Formula One wasn't just winning Formula One. They were dominating it. And when Formula One entered the new hybrid turbo era in 2014, Mercedes showed up with something the rest of the grid simply could not compete with. A powertrain so advanced that it completely changed the sport. While other teams were fighting reliability issues and inconsistent performance, Mercedes built a machine that was brutally fast and unbelievably efficient at the same time. And almost overnight, the Formula One became the Mercedes era. With Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg behind the wheel, Mercedes kept going, race after race, season after season, championship after championship, and at the center of it was the engine. A tiny 1.6 turbocharged V6 paired with some of the most advanced hybrid systems the sport had ever seen. This wasn't just raw horsepower. The car was constantly thinking, electric motors recovering under braking, battery systems controlling power delivery, turbochargers spinning at insane speed, software is making thousands of adjustments at every second. It did not feel like a normal engine. It felt more like a, it felt more like a rolling supercomputer built for war. And eventually, someone inside the Mercedes asked the question that sounded absolutely ridiculous. What if we took this exact technology and somehow put it into a road car? Not a toned version, not something inspired by Formula One, but the real thing. And that single idea would turn into one of the most insane, difficult engineering projects the automotive world has ever seen. Then in 2017, Mercedes finally revealed the Mercedes-AMG Project One concept. And honestly, the entire car world froze for a moment because nobody had ever attempted something this extreme. You see, most hypercars love to say they're inspired by racing technology, but the AMG ONE wasn't inspired by Formula One. It was the Formula One technology. Mercedes was literally taking the V6 hybrid engine that powered Lewis Hamilton's championship-winning Formula One car and putting it into a road-legal hypercar. On paper, it sounded completely unreal. 1,000 horsepower, hybrid all-wheel drive, a red line screaming past 11,000 RPM, electric motors powering the front wheels, active aerodynamics, race-derived suspension, a full carbon monocoque. It sounded less like a road car and more like science fiction, but behind that excitement, a lot of engineers already know the truth. The truth that this project was an absolutely nightmare because Formula One engines are never designed for a normal life. They are built for maximum attack. They don't care about traffic. They don't care about comfort. They don't care about sitting at stoplights or crawling under city streets. A Formula One engine expects one thing only: to live at insane RPMs. So the moment Mercedes tried adapting this technology to public roads, everything started fighting back. Overheating problems, terrible drivability, insanely complicated hybrid calibration, and then came the biggest issue of them all. The engine barely wanted to properly behave at low speeds. Which makes sense when you think about it. Imagine trying to turn a Formula 1 car into something that you could casually drive to dinner with. That's basically what Mercedes was attempting to do. And the deeper they got into the development, the more impossible the project started to feel. The Mercedes-AMG ONE was supposed to arrive quickly. At least that was the plan. But then delays started. Months turned into years. Deadlines quietly disappeared. And slowly people began wondering if AMG had pushed things too far this time. Because every time engineers solved one problem, 3 more appeared right behind it. The Formula 1 engine needed to survive real-world road conditions, and that alone was incredibly difficult. But then came another problem: emission regulations. Because modern road cars had to follow incredibly strict environmental laws, and the Formula 1 engine was never designed with that in mind. Especially was still trying to perform like a Formula 1 car, so many had to re-engineer almost everything. New cooling system, completely rewritten software, returned power delivery, entire new calibration system, and even after all that, the reliability was still unbelievably complicated. Because underneath it all, the AMG ONE remained one of the most extreme powertrains that ever been placed in a production car. A tiny 1.6 turbocharged V6, 4 electric motors, a Formula 1 inspired battery system, electric turbo technology, electric front axle drive, hybrid assistant at the rear. At some point, this stopped feeling like normal engineering. It became more controlled chaos. Most companies probably would have walked away from this project completely, but Mercedes refused to stop, because by then the AMG ONE, it became something bigger than just hypercar. It became proof that Mercedes could accomplish something nobody else was even brave enough to attempt. After all these years of delays, failure, and engineering nightmares, that impossible machine finally became real. When the production of the AMG ONE finally arrived, it looked less like a road car, more like an escaped Le Mans prototype. Every surface had a purpose: massive aerodynamic tunnels, active rearway, roof air intake, carbon fiber everywhere. Nothing about this car was subtle, because the AMG ONE wasn't designed around comfort, it was designed around airflow. Even the interior felt closer to a race car than a luxury Mercedes. Fixed seat, race-inspired steering wheel, minimal distraction, low driving position. And then there was engine, or more accurately the system, because calling the AMG ONE just an engine almost feels wrong. This car behaved like multiple machines communicating together at once. The combustion engine, the electric motors, the battery systems, energy recovery system, aerodynamics, everything constantly talking to each other, and when it all works together, the performance becomes completely ridiculous. 0 to 100 in 2.9 seconds. Over 350 kilometers per hour top speed, and over 1,000 horsepower. The numbers alone don't explain why the AMG ONE is special. Because this car isn't memorable because it's fast. It's memorable because the feels are natural. The noise, aggression, the way the engine climbs through RPM range. Most modern cars feel refined. AMG ONE feels alive, more like a race car, barely tolerating the existence of public roads. And nowhere became more important to proving that than the Nürburgring. Eventually, Mercedes needed to prove that the AMG ONE wasn't just a technological experiment. They needed to prove that it was truly one of the greatest performance cars ever built. So they had to take it to the Nürburgring, the Green Hell, one of the most dangerous and respected tracks in the world. And the AMG ONE made history. The car became the fastest production car to ever leave the Nürburgring. That record meant more than just numbers, because it proved something bigger. That impossible Formula 1 road car idea actually worked. Years of delays, engineering nightmares, technical disasters, all of it suddenly made sense. Because watching the AMG ONE attack corners almost felt unreal. Aerodynamics pinning the car to the track, hybrid systems deploying power instantly, the engine screaming like an actual race car. Most hypercars look inspired by motorsport, but the AMG ONE behaves like a motorsport, and that's what makes it different. It does not feel like a road car pretending to be a race car. It feels like a race car trying to survive everyday life. The AMG ONE was never supposed to be practical. It was never supposed to be easy. And that's exactly why it matters. Because in a world where many performance cars are becoming more quieter, more digital, more controlled, Mercedes built something that is completely unreasonable. A machine that pushed engineering beyond common sense. And maybe that's exactly why the AMG ONE is special. Not just the speed, not just the technology, not just the Formula One connection, but the fact that Mercedes actually committed to the idea. Most companies would have stopped halfway, but Mercedes finished it. Even when the project became painfully complicated, even when the development stretched for years, even when people started doubting whether it would never exist. Because the AMG ONE wasn't built to be sensible, it was built to answer only one question: what happens when a Formula One is kept the rest straight? And I think we all know that answer. Because after all that chaos, the delays, the failures, the endless engineering nightmares, what Mercedes ended up creating was one of the wildest hypercars the world had ever seen. And years from now, people will look back to this era of automotive history. There's a very good chance that the AMG ONE will be remembered as one of the truly insane engineering achievements. Not because it was perfect, but because it dared to exist at all.